Welcome back to the loading zone. Today's deep thought, trucks have big wheels.
Cargo theft went down 26%. That's great news, except the money stolen more than doubled. That's right, $304 million in 1 quarter. Apparently, thieves discovered the efficiency before trucking did. So today, forget who stole the freight. I've got a better question. When the load disappears, who gets stuck with the bill? Spoiler alert, it's probably the guy holding the steering wheel. Let's hit the brakes. See, up first today when we talk about it, we're going to do our daily pileup, but then we're going to bring Jared Flinn. He built a bulk freight marketplace from the basement up and now decides who gets in the front door. Then Drew Wilder's in the house, a risk management CEO who can look at your insurance certificate and tell you exactly where you're about to get screwed. Today, we're not complaining about the problem. We're showing you how to not become the next $564,000 statistic, because when freight disappears, somebody's left holding the bill. Make damn sure it isn't you. This is Break Check, and it's time to go full stop. Now, if you're serious about protecting your money and running smarter in today's industry, then like, subscribe, and follow for your top Freightcast, trucking news, and real trucking talk right here on FreightWaves. Also, check out F3. That's the Future of Freight Festival. It's Freight Tech's main stage. The leaders you need to hear from, the access and connections you won't get anywhere else. Use promo code TAKE20 for 20% off your current pricing. That's TAKE20. Register today. Now, before we get serious, it's time to dive into our new favorite segment. That's right, the Daily Pileup. Ukraine hit one of the largest wild berry logistics hubs in Russia, $1.5 billion in damages. Now, when we talk about this, $1.5 billion in damages, that's right, $3.32 billion once demolition, cleanup costs, and everything else is included. Check this out. Look at that damage. When you look at that, that is $3.32 billion in cleanup costs after Ukraine hit the wild berries logistics hub in Russia. Now, that's going to disrupt their supply chain. But let's talk about our supply chain. Let's talk about efficiency. Check out this next clip. I don't know about you, but that doesn't look like efficiency to me.
What you're witnessing here is an Amazon worker using a powered trailer spotter. And with one of these machines, they can pick up and move one of these massive trailers all throughout the yard. And why are they doing this? Well, it's cheaper than having a truck driver with a CDL do it. So the labor cost, you can have a yard operator do this job for only about $19 an hour. And if you were to have a truck driver do it, it would cost you significantly more, and they would need licensing. So do you need licensing to operate one of these?
All right, we're going to stop that right there. And here's why I'm going to stop that. That's all wrong. See, I'm all about bringing you the news. I'm all about bringing you information that's pertinent. But there's bad information out there. So newsflash to everyone that's sitting there passing that around saying that's replacing truck driver's job. Yes, that job is traditionally held by a truck driver, but it doesn't have to be. To be a yard spotter, you do not need a CDL for yard moves. And this is where information matters. For all of those out there sitting in the cheap seats, sorry to ruin your day. That is not the nail in the coffin you think it is, because you do not need a CDL for yard moves. Now, if you're looking for a nail in the coffin, then check out this next clip.
Check that fucking out.
Oof.
Check that fucking out.
Sir, you can't drive on the wrong side of the highway. My bad for informing you that you are on the wrong side. Now, maybe they got their notes from efficiency when they're having all these conversations from this next clip. Check this out.
Stop. I want it. I got it. I want it. I got it. I want it. Stop.
Eesh.
I want it.
Eh.
I got it.
Where there's a will, there's a way. Obviously, this person really wanted that TV and they didn't have, well, the vehicle to transport it. So that was that's a move of testicular fortitude when you decide to drive with your door open and your brand new TV partially hanging out. Now we're going to go to a shout out from our sponsors over at OOIDA.
Protect your truck with coverage from trusted trucking experts who understand life on the road. When you choose OOIDA truck insurance, you're doing more than protecting your business. You're supporting the organization that fights for the rights of truckers every day. Your participation in our insurance program helps strengthen our mission to make life better on the road and at home for you.
All right. Well, now we're going to get down to business. My first guest has worked the dock, the brokerage, the risk desk. He got a master's degree from the University of Washington School of Law, which apparently happens when a freight guy gets tired of losing arguments. Drew Wilder is the founder and CEO of Vicarious Liability Risk Management and works with the Freight Fraud Task Force. His world is insurance, cargo claims, fraud, and the fine print nobody reads until somebody owes a lot of money. Drew, let's find out what the paperwork actually means when everything goes sideways. Welcome to Break Check.
Hey, how you doing?
How's it going, my guy? How's life been treating you?
Hey, man, it's pretty good. Yeah, been a great summer so far. What about yourself?
It's been a fast-moving summer. When you have a teenager, summer tends to hit a little differently. They forget that summer for them isn't summer for you.
I hear you, man. Been there, done that.
He's like, got the t-shirt. You wear a lot of hats and t-shirts, by the way, so I'm interested for this conversation.
Yeah, hey, man, I got this one when I was in school at UW Law. Went to a Who concert.
Yeah, I got to hear the story. Like, what made you decide, hey, I want to go this route? Like, not a lot of people decide one day they're just going to go to the School of Law just for, midlife and say, hey, I'm going to go do something different.
Hey, you know what? It kind of fell in my lap. A friend of mine knew one of the advisors at UW Law. I live local. They were talking to me about the program. I went over and had a conversation, and it just happened.
So there's a lot of things that just happen in freight. We're going to talk about that today. I mean, everyone wants to talk about what it takes for things to go wrong, but when things go wrong, who pays when the load is screwed up? Everybody throws around vicarious liability. Explain it like I own 6 trucks. How does somebody else's screw up and end up becoming my lawsuit, my problem? Like, a lot of people don't understand how that translates.
Well, I first of all say, never take legal advice off of a podcast. I don't give it, so I just want to make sure that's clear to the listeners.
Do they teach that in law school? Because all of you guys start the show with the same one-liner.
Well, yeah, exactly. But I would never advise anyone to take legal advice off a podcast. But at any rate, to say, how do things go wrong and how do you wind up, being responsible for someone else's mistakes? At the end of the day, it really comes down to not following your SOP, or whether you had an SOP that was realistic or not. That's really where the whole thing starts. So when it comes to, if we're talking about insurance vetting, the first step would be, again, to establish a realistic SOP and make sure that the things that are in it apply, starting with, your commercial insurance broker, whoever, placed your coverages. If you are a owner operator running under a motor carrier's authority, then it would start with them. But that's the first step, I would say.
Now, if a criminal clones a legitimate carrier's identity and then steals the load, who gets dragged into that fight? An innocent carrier, the broker, the shipper? Who ends up reaching for the checkbook first in those scenarios?
A lot of times this environment is freight broker. depending on if the load's stolen, we hear it every single day. It falls into the hands of a freight broker. Now, if there's a vehicle accident or if the cargo is damaged, that's different. It could fall on the seat of the shipper, but they're going to push it down to the freight broker, of course. And so in those situations where a freight broker is involved, it get pushed down. It get pushed down to them.
So if I get a letter tomorrow saying I'm involved in a claim for a load that I never hauled, what are my first 3 moves that I should make in the first 24 hours?
First thing I do is get a hold of the party that sent it. If you're going to get a letter like that, it should be coming from, a claims adjuster, an insurance company, someone that's handling that claim. Now, if it's, say, for instance, from the actual claimant, the person that's, saying that they're due the money, in that case, I would forward that on to whoever my insurance agent or broker is, whatever the protocol is for receiving claims. That's what I would follow.
So what shouldn't I do then? Like, we always talk about what people should do in that first 24 hours, but let's talk about the things that people shouldn't do that you often find them doing and wasting time and effort on.
Never admit to liability, for one. Never go through the process of, trying to resolve the claim if you're not authorized to do so. And again, that comes down to, what's in your SOP. And you want to, and that's what, you want to have that so that you know exactly what to do. When a claim does occur, some policies may require you to notify the insurer right away. So it depends on, that. And so again, it's kind of it starts with, how did you set this up?
Well, I think it also takes understanding what the SOPs are. A lot of times you walk into an organization, I worked as a consultant for years, and you walk in, they have SOPs, but they treat them like they're suggested operating procedures rather than they're the standard. And you have to have that consistency because that helps people have that muscle memory of what to do in those scenarios.
Well, it does. But then, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I've seen over the years where someone will have an SOP that it was like a copy and paste, from the internet, or they got it from a friend. And that's really the last thing that you want to do. When it comes to establishing an SOP, I always suggest, reach out to a legal professional that has experience in that area. You want to start with your insurance broker. That's one of the people that you want to start with, is to, talk to them about it, and then get with that legal professional. If your insurance broker isn't willing to help you, then you probably need a different insurance broker agent, to be honest with you. But you want to start with those two folks, because the insurance guy or lady, they should know what's in your policy and what your due diligence requirements are. So you want to start there, and then you want to make sure that you have something that'll stand the test of time if litigation hits, providing that you followed it.
Now, let's talk about insurance certificates. It's
Right.
the certificate nobody actually reads. You're the certificate of insurance guy. What's the number one thing you see wrong with certificates of insurance, and how much is it, or how much of it is just, fraud versus just incompetence?
You have some fraud there, but it's more of incompetence is more that I see more than anything else. And just with the age that we're in now, when it comes to tech and so forth, I kind of go away from, say, certificates of insurance and look more down the road of verifying coverage, which that's really what it's been about all along, is verifying coverage. And so, one of the things that to prevent fraud, there's a lot of tech tools out there that can be utilized. But, the first thing to do when it comes to, making sure that when it comes to the fraud piece, is making sure that you're dealing with the correct insurance agent or broker. That's the first step. From there, it's going to go back to, what's in your SOP, and do you have the right people, vetting that insurance. A lot of times I see what goes wrong is that, a freight broker, just say for instance, not all, but some, they'll just have, everyone that's involved with booking loads verifying coverage. And that's just, I wouldn't suggest that. You want to have someone, if you can, you want to have someone that's dedicated to vetting that coverage, and that's all they do. Because when you have other folks involved, and they, and they're responsible for moving the loads, et cetera, if something goes wrong, the optics just aren't good. But again, you want a person that that's their job, just to vet that insurance, and they need to be properly trained, and that training needs to be reoccurring, throughout the years. It's just, and so that's the biggest thing that I see is that people just don't understand the coverages or the proper protocol.
So how do you tell if a COI has been doctored or is fake? Like, what's something that stands out that, a dispatcher sitting at a desk might miss, or a broker sitting behind the keyboard might miss if they just, check the box, I got a page in front of me?
Well, you know what? Doctored, I would say if it's doctored, that meant that it came from a nefarious actor, right? Someone that's committing fraud, right? That's where that came from. And so in that case, what you have there is you have a breach of where, you didn't follow, you're not using the tools to minimize receiving information from a fraudster. And so again, you need to know who you're getting that information from. And so for me, if I received an email that I didn't request, I'm not even looking at that at COI or the insurance information. It could be endorsements, whatever. So I'm going to check to see, okay, in my system, I'm checking to see, okay, who is the actual commercial agent, because I'll have that record from the shipper or the freight broker. And at that time, I'm going to contact those individuals directly, to make sure I'm dealing with the right person. You have other organizations that they do like a direct fetch when it comes to documentation. That's another issue. But at the end of the day, when it comes to the fraud, to minimize it, you need to make sure you're dealing with the proper parties. If you're not, if you know that you're dealing with the proper parties, at that point, is really looking at the COI to confirm that it complies with the requirements that are needed, or and specifically with the COI, sometimes I see things like when it comes to dollar liability, if you see the word like contingency in the middle of the cert off to the right, there's probably an issue, and more often than not, the insurance agent or broker, they're trying to disguise contingent auto primary, and they're not the same, things like that.
Now, we've tightened broker financial responsibility requirements. So how does a carrier independently verify today that a broker actually has the required financial security before giving them thousands of dollars worth of freight to transport?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, and I'll say that extends beyond just the freight broker. And I've been saying this to folks for the last year. I see a lot of attention placed on vetting the motor carrier, which is important, but I haven't seen a lot of attention on vetting the freight broker or vetting these third-party compliance companies. And what I mean by that, if you're, say for instance, a freight broker, you want to know whether or not they have the financial means to, pay these losses or and so forth, if it comes down to that. And that's going to start with, again, verifying their coverage as well, making sure that whoever they have their insurance through knows exactly what they're doing for you. And I would have that, documented via email versus a phone conversation. I hear a lot of people say, I made a phone call and asked a question. In the event of litigation, you just got a he said, she said. And so, you want to verify that, and in doing so, you'll find out a lot. But I also want to emphasize that I think folks, the people that aren't, I think you need to pay more attention to the compliance companies, whether it's safety, whatever that you're utilizing as well. You want to make sure that those folks, have the financial means to respond to losses. If they did something wrong, because you may get dragged into it, and you want to make sure that they have the proper coverages in place. But more importantly, whatever agreement that you have with them, you need to have someone look at that to make sure that they are liable for the things they do. Because I hear about some of these contracts and agreements rather, and the third party compliance agency, they won't be responsible for anything. And so I'm like, well, if they're not responsible for anything, then why would you deal with them? So, I see a lot of that, people saying, well, why X? Well, it started with like the agreement. So sometimes faster isn't better. You want to make sure that, if there's no accountability, then the transparency kind of falls to the wayside, if that makes sense.
No, it does. Now, let's run this back from the other perspective. My own insurance agent screws up my paperwork. A claim inevitably happens. Coverage gets disputed and or denied. Am I screwed, or can the agent own part of this mistake?
The agent can definitely own part of the mistake, and there's case law to support that. Okay. And one of the ways that, they can own it is that if for some reason, when the request for coverage was provided, if they misrepresented something, that's another way. So in the claims process, if they're handling that, there's things that they could possibly have done wrong there that could cause them to own it. But primarily, it comes down to if they misrepresented the type of coverage that was actually there. If they knew that, if they misrepresented something to the insurance underwriter at the time that the policy was being underwritten, could possibly cause them to be liable as well. Some folks say that under when it comes to auto liability, that the insurance company is always going to pay. Well, if that was the case, there wouldn't be a lot of litigation all the time, questioning whether or not the MCS 90 endorsement is going to be used. That's another conversation. But what I'm saying is just because it's an auto liability policy doesn't mean that the insurance company is just automatically going to pay that loss, because I've seen it both ways.
Now, when you see carriers lose cargo claims, how often did they actually screw up the load versus simply failed to prove that they didn't screw it up?
That's a tricky one. And the reason I say that is that every situation is different, right? It just is. Some folks think that, well, it was the insurance company's fault, and sometimes the adjusters do get it wrong. In other cases, it really came down to something that the motor carrier did, and so that's really a case-by-case basis. And, the solution to that really is to have an experience, someone that's handling your cargo claims. They got to really know what they're doing. And in those situations, I think
you want trained professionals doing a job protecting you?
What's it again?
We want trained professionals that know what they're doing the jobs to protect us.
Well, when you don't, you have these situations like when you started the show today with that guy with the yard hostler thing, misinformation. That's where misinformation comes from. You have someone that's not qualified with experience, and they want to say that they got screwed on a claim when it really didn't happen that way.
No, and that's the world we live in. We live in a day and age, and that's why I take this show and the responsibility of doing the show and bringing the right guest on to talk about this stuff very importantly, because we live in a day and age. Just because you can doesn't mean you should, and just because you can go out there and spread misinformation, you don't realize the implications that causes. Like, you get a public outcry, like everyone's against that yard hustler using the power jack to move a trailer. I think that there's totally so many reasons to be against that. It doesn't look very efficient. I looked at the time that took, and I could have had a spotter move probably set three different trailers in that time while that guy was moving one with the power jack. But that's not the point I'm trying to make here. The point is like, it's important to have the right information, the right parties at play to discuss this stuff. Otherwise, people pour too much effort into the misinformation, and it doesn't actually move the needle for anyone. And this thing right here, it's a growing problem in the industry. People are constantly getting nailed with claims or issues that they just weren't prepared for. And then they look around and they point the finger at everyone else. And really, sometimes you just need to look in the mirror and say, well, I could have done better.
Well, you could have done better, but give an example. You know, I'm sure saw this right after the pandemic was over, and there was just a huge spike in fraud. What I saw was a lot of people were paying attention to certificates of insurance and the vetting process when it came to insurance, which was great. But you had a lot of misinformation going around. You had folks posting certificates of insurance on LinkedIn saying that it was a fake COI, when in fact the COI didn't even have a certificate holder's name written on it. It was no good in the first place. You had folks using these documents saying they vetted it and this, that, and the other, and other people were piling on. And I'm like, why were you even looking at that COI? So things like that, sparks more misinformation. Unfortunately, a lot of times, people will like a certain person's personality that's offering these services, and because they like their personality, they say they're this genius when they're really not. And I'm not trying to be harsh, but that's just a reality.
All right, my hard stop question for you, yes or no, no lawyering allowed on this one. Can a carrier do everything right and still get dragged into liability for a fraud he had absolutely nothing to do with?
Absolutely, because in a situation where the fraud is taking place, a claim or litigation is going to take place, everybody's getting named in anyway. So
if the
I would
answer
say
is yes, what's the one document you want in your hand when that fight starts? What's that one thing that you wish everyone knew to have in hand at the beginning of that battle?
To have followed your SOP. That's it. That's what's going to save you. At the end of the day, follow your SOP.
That makes sense. If people want to pick your brain, enlist your expertise, how would they find you?
Drew Singleton Wilder on LinkedIn.
All right. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to join us on Break Check. We're going to go to a shout out from our sponsors over at Hey Bubba.
Hi.
All right, now.
I'm Bubba, the one and only voice AI that solves all your trucking needs. Whether it's dispatch, managing fleet, or negotiating, I can handle it all. With just one command, I can make 10 parallel calls to brokers and negotiate the best rates for you. And it doesn't stop there. I can auto-book the ideal load for you in less than 10 minutes, so that you can focus on driving while I handle everything else. Come, let's work together. Try me out for free at bubba.ai.
We're back on Break Check. Huge thank you to all of our sponsors and the support we have on the show. Up next, my next guest knows freight from every damn angle. That's right. Jared Flinn started his family's Missouri sawmill, drove a truck, then built bulkloads.com out of a basement, turned it into an entire bulk freight ecosystem, loads, factoring, compliance, insurance, which means Jared doesn't just see who gets the freight. He sees what happens when the freight goes sideways. And today we're going to find out what actually happens when someone gets stuck holding the bag. Fair warning, he brought receipts. And Jared, welcome to Break Check.
Charles, thanks for having me on. Good to see you again.
Yeah, it's nice to see you in this setting, man. We got video on this side. So, you come from a diverse background. And I think in today's conversation, we're talking about how to protect your business and also how to understand every aspect of your business. We have to talk about what happens when something goes wrong. You have carriers, brokers, shippers, all touching the same platform. When a load gets stolen or double brokered, forget the contract or the 90-day letter. Who actually eats the money, and what are you aiming to solve here?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you just through my history, before starting bulk loads, I worked for a large grain trading company. And one thing that we had to was number one priority was getting that COI. And again, back then it was getting it by fax. We would, give the trucker our fax number. He would give it to the insurance company, and then we'd have to have that fax in hand to do that. Where we saw it in the grain industry, a couple different examples where we had issues. Number one is if a carrier, loaded fertilizer, unloaded that fertilizer, then loaded grain without cleaning out his trailer. So if he went to that next destination and they had fertilizer, traces of fertilizer, whether it was up on the rails or it came out when they did a sample, that whole load would get rejected. Well, 9 times out of 10, that was the liability was on the carrier. He was responsible for making sure that that trailer was cleaned out to the proper, everything was, in spec. So a lot of times that carrier would have to eat that load is what we would say. And it was one of the most painful conversations I would have to have because I'd have to go back to that carrier. And again, we're talking a load of corn or a load of soybeans, sometimes not near the value of cargo when you're looking at some of the general freight, but still that could be a $10,000, $12,000 bill. That's number one. And then number two, he's got to figure out what to do with it, because essentially he owns the load then. Well, then he's coming back to us like, well, where do you want me to take this? I have no idea. So then the second question was trying to get it off somewhere else. So that was the other one. But I think when I started Bartlett, the credit manager who handled all of our COIs, getting all the information, the W-9s and all that, he always told me this. He said, Jared, just remember that, if anything happens, they're going to go after the deep pockets. If you hire this trucker and he's driving down the road and he hits a busload of nuns, are they going to go after the trucker? No, they're going to go after the shipper, the company I was working for, Bartlett Grain, because we had a lot deeper pockets than that trucker. So again, I think every situation is different, but yeah, we had to be very cautious on making sure that we hired that trucker and then doing our proper, vetting to make sure that he was good to haul these loads and that you were hoping that nothing was going to go wrong.
Now, sometimes things can go wrong that you don't plan. Like, say I hauled the load, I delivered it clean, but now the broker disappeared. Or worse, I discovered the authority was stolen to begin with. What are my first 3 moves in your experience that I should make in the first 48 hours if I want any chance of seeing my money?
Number one, and we see this too, because we also run a factoring company, Smart Freight Funding, where, we look at these loads, and we had a situation, this was 10 years ago, where we had a carrier that was, essentially he was hauling for a shipper, and then he started just creating fake bill of ladings and sending them then. And again, this was 10 years ago, and we were cutting our teeth or kind of learning. And what we didn't realize, we started paying these because the first bill of ladings were good, but then the second ones were not. So we essentially, we tried to go back to the carrier. He went MIA. So then we had to take, this carrier in that instance was out in California. So then we had to get the law enforcement involved. But I'll say this, Charles, I think the biggest thing you got to learn with all this, the responsibility is always going to fall back on you. You look at, you want insurance to pay claims, you want all these others, but just remember, if stuff hits the fan, you're going to be the one responsible. So trying to take every step possible to mitigate that in the very beginning. I can't stress that enough. I think some people too, and we run an insurance company, so I'm playing two sides of the table here. But again, insurance companies, they're not here, they're a risk mitigator. They're not just, it's not just like, hey, I'm insured, so I'm good to go. I can take risk or do whatever. Like I said, you still have to limit your risk because insurance companies, they're going to look at every little detail to prove that they don't have to pay those claims.
Well, and you got bulkloads.com. You've actually thrown people off bulk loads. What's the tell? What's a behavior? Obviously, you're trying to protect the integrity of what you've built. What's some of the things that tell you that this person doesn't belong on that platform?
Yeah, great question. A lot of times, we have a rating system on our load board, and we really push hard for carriers to rate, just like Amazon anywhere else. It's probably one of the reasons that we've really excelled over the years because we have this detailed rating system where companies can go in and vet other companies, whether they've hauled for them. But I think first off, you look to see if anybody's got a rating, and then how long they've been on the board, how long they've been in business. So I think that'll tell you a lot. If there's a new player on there, it's listed on the board, but use cautious. If they've only been on our board for 6 months, maybe they've been in business for 5 years. They just haven't used our service yet. But that's something that, number one, look how long they've been on there, look at the activity that they've had on there. And then again, today with the resources online, you can get online and start searching these companies to give that. So again, nothing's 100% bulletproof, but yeah, before you ask for that load number, go pick up that load, make sure that you're checking all those boxes.
Now, you're on the insurance side of things too. So explain this to me. Small fleets can pay roughly 3 times what a large fleet pays per mile for insurance. Why? Why are they 3 times more the risk? Are they getting 3 times more the screwing in the process? And what are you aiming to achieve by your involvement in this?
Yeah, so one of the reasons we started insurance almost 6 years ago was we saw that it was a problem in the industry, still a problem today, but small carriers, when I started 22 years ago in the industry, on average, like that one truck operator, he was paying roughly, $2,000, $2,500 a year in total insurance, liability, and cargo coverage. That same carrier today is paying $25,000. I mean, they're paying 10 times the cost to get insured. And when you talk to the big insurance underwriters, what you hear is social inflation, which basically means, that the accidents that these other carriers are causing, because insurance companies, they're taking this big pool of carriers and they're putting them in, looking at the risk score, and they're trying to figure out what's the least amount of claims that we can pay out per year. We took an approach in our industry specifically. When you look at agriculture, a lot of our carriers come from rural America, small town. A lot of these guys were driving trucks before they ever had a CDL. They were driving them on the farm, operating tractors and equipment. We saw an opportunity to say, hey, we have a very niche audience. We have a very niche amount that they don't need to be paying the cost of these other carriers that are having these accidents, having these high claims. And since then, we've really, it takes time, but we've been able to really capture that market and provide more affordable insurance. But again, the reason is, you look at it, and again, not saying it's right, but from an insurance company, carrier, they look at all this risk and they put it all into one big bucket and they try to figure out what's the least amount. And then every year they pay out a certain amount of claims. And then they have their algorithms and everything they put together to say, hey, based on what we had to pay out last year, this is where we need to be at, to make sure that we're covering our cost. And obviously they got to make a margin too. So that's really what it boils down to, social inflation. And again, everybody knows it. That's been on the road. I mean, these accidents, the claims continue to get higher and higher.
Now, obviously, different operations, there's different gaps when it comes to the insurance. In the bulk space, what's the most common gap that you see that could separate a claim being paid out and one that's not covered?
Ooh, that's a really good question, Charles. I think where we see it, it's all the stuff prior that they're looking for. There's simple things. I know these get overlooked, but these insurance companies, they look at, the prior history of that truck, where they've been running, anything even on social media that they're doing. I mean, any little fault that they can find. So I'll say this, from presence, you got to have carriers that are operating very professionally. I think insurance companies, attorneys, they're going to try to find any little loophole that they can to show that this person wasn't in sound mind, that there was some tiny little flaw. So I think that's where it's, trucking, it's gotten so different today. Like, people think, I can find a driver, throw them in a truck. And again, there's so much more risk involved today than there's ever been, especially with these high insurance claims, that you have to go through that vetting process. I know people have a hard time finding these carriers. But again, they have to go through, it's more than just, hey, this guy wants to haul. He's got a, CDL, his driving record looks okay. Go a little bit deeper than that. Find out any other history that driver has had in the past.
Now, there's a scary number floating around out there. The median nuclear verdict has reportedly hit $51 million. Meanwhile, somebody's running down the interstate with a $1 million liability. What the hell are we doing here? And how do we fix it? Is that 51 million number a legitimate threat to the average carrier? Or are we using nuclear verdicts to scare the hell out of everyone to justify the rising premiums?
I wish I had the right answer, but the one thing I can tell you, as our economy keeps developing, our roadways keep getting busier, more and more attorneys out there, and there are great attorneys out there. I'm not saying that, but the ones that are, making these laws, passing these, again, it's a growing, it's just a growing concern. I think there's got to be reform and laws passed. Some, I think in Iowa they have, and some where they have restricted this. But when you get legislators and lawmakers that are attorneys as well, I think we run into this problem because, they want to protect their industry, the industry of law. So I think that's where we got to go back to the basics. We got to go back to where this has really started. And again, it's got to be a top-down approach, trying to push for more affordability. Because here's the thing that people don't realize. These costs indirectly get paid by the consumer. So those families, the bread you're buying at the store, the headphones that you're wearing on your head, like all of those.
Wait, the companies are eating this?
Coming from this.
The companies aren't eating all of this? It's trickling down to the consumer? What a crazy concept.
Common sense approach. But yeah, and I think it's just like people aren't looking at it. It's something that you see, we all complain because we see these billboard attorneys, on the highway, but who's making a move to really help protect the carriers, help protect the trucking companies?
All right, so I want to shift gears a little bit with the remaining time we have. I want to talk about the bulk market. Every time a drive-in market gets ugly, somebody's out there saying, screw this, I'm going bulk. Before someone buys a bulk trailer, before someone decides to get into the bulk industry, what should they be looking at as far as insurance, cost, compliance? What's the real price of admission from your experience?
I think when we look at bulk, versus van, refrigerated, flatbed freight, that freight is a lot larger market. That's where you see the coast to coast, more regional market. Most time when we're dealing with bulk, you're in a smaller radius. We're dealing with, on average 200, 250 mile radius. If you're looking into the bulk market, number one, look in your area, what opportunities there are. Are there companies that are using raw materials, agriculture, industrial products that you can have, that there's an opportunity to pull for? I'll say this too, in the bulk market, it's very different because we don't have these big ebbs and flows of the market. You don't see these really high peaks or these really low valleys. Some companies, they enjoy that. They want to, ride the highs and then, kind of get out when the lows are. Bulk, it's very stable for the most part. And again, I'll say this, we're in the agriculture game, which sometimes we say that we're 20 years behind. We're in a very old, I would say handshake is still very valuable. People want to look you in the eye. So we're in a very kind of good old boy market, which is kind of one of the reasons why I came from this industry, from the ag industry, and kind of why I've always had a passion for it. So I think that's the industry to look at. Again, we're very much in rural America, small town America. So, if you're out there looking at that and you see opportunities where there's a feed mill, or an ethanol plant, or maybe there's some kind of frac sand or industrial, that's really our sweet spot. But I'll also say this too, bulk, and there can be arguments to this, bulk requires a lot more attention to detail when you're dealing with that commodity. When I started the show, I said this, you're not just that driver, but you're really shepherding that load and making sure that there's no cross-contamination. Again, we're dealing with food products that are going into, human consumption. So there's got to be probably an extra set of eyes, really, really common sense, that you're really taking care of that load.
Now, you built bulk loads. You have factoring, you have compliance, you have insurance. Why?
We started bulk loads 15 years ago, and the problem we saw in the industry was so many small carriers were cycling through. They were going, the ones when I worked at the grain company, they'd be in the market, then all of a sudden they'd be flushed out, whether it was the rates went down, or just other factors. Well, we realized the market is the market, and there's a debate on that. But we realized these guys weren't really looking at the backside of their business. How could we help them more than just finding that load? How could we help them get their money quicker? How do we stop predatory factoring companies? How do we get them more affordable insurance? How do we get them better fuel cards? And again, we realized over the year, we could serve these customers not just in one bucket, but in several buckets. And if you add all those up, it really helps a company be more stable. Because again, what we look at we have to make money and we have to, survive. But our survival is on the survival of our members. And if we're just washing through carriers or washing through members, that's not doing anybody a service. So it was really kind of getting a little bit deeper and learning more than we're not just a load board. I mean, we're a full service ecosystem to help that carrier from every element of his business cycle. And we know this, most carriers in the industry, they want to own the business and they want to drive and operate that truck. We want to help them support on all those other elements on the backside. Take that burden off them, and we want to see them prosper through that. And it's been a blessing over the years. I mean, we've had companies that started with one truck, brand new in the business, today operating over 60, 80 trucks. And we'd love to say that we've helped them along the way. We've got them on that. So that's what gives us the greatest joy. One thing I wanted to add, and it's been relatively new, we now are in the livestock hauling industry as well. We purchased Livestock Network, which is also a load board for livestock haulers. So our goal is to, again, open that market up, open that door of opportunities, but also not just be a load board for livestock haulers, but also provide the same services, the insurance, the factoring, fuel cards, data, anything that we can help to really empower those carriers.
I love that. And exciting times. You're expanding into the livestock realm. Obviously, you found success in the years that you've been doing it with bulk loads. So now you're able to help an entirely different side niche market there find success as well. So that's pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, there's no greater joy. The thing is, like, we want to, we're all in this business to make money. I mean, we want to make money, but really it ultimately boils down to we want to provide for our families. We want to provide for ourselves and our kids and our families. But the greatest gift anybody can receive, in my opinion, is when you can help and serve someone else and watch them prosper in life and watch that owner operator that was either struggling or couldn't make ends meet now prospering. He's able to feed his family, run a very successful business. And again, it's a win-win.
Now, Jared, my question for you for your hard stop question is 5 trucks, good operation, good driver, doing everything reasonably right. Today's insurance is crushing them. So I want to put yourself in the owner's chair for that operation. How much money per truck should that operator budget for insurance and the risk carrying over in the remaining 2026, going into 2027? Give me that number. 12 months from now, what should they be budgeting?
Hard number. I would say, you need to be planning at least, I'm going to get grilled on this one, but I think you need to be planning at least 2 or 3 months out in your operating costs. That may not seem economical or viable. And it doesn't have to be just liquid cash, but how do I know that if something gets slow, the market falls out, I have some kind of big wreck or something catastrophic. How do I survive?
Fund.
I think that's just it. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
An oh shit fund. We all need that emergency brake scenario. And I think that's a good exercise for a business to have, though. Like, not everything's going to be honky dory. It's not rainbows and unicorns and sparkles in trucking. Like, trucking be trucking, life be life. And then as a business owner, you have the responsibility to not only your operation, but yourself to have an oh shit fund.
One thing too, I'll add to that, Charles, and again, I always want to give the gold out to the people listening. And this is where I've seen, and we have a YouTube channel. We interview thousands of carriers. I've talked to so many over the years, and we get to get all these little nuggets and then give them back. But the most successful companies I see out there, they are doing more than just trucking. Trucking is the source. That's where they started, but they've figured out other ways to capture revenue for that truck. So I think that's one of the best ways you can stay and weather the storms. It says in Ecclesiastes, you have to have 7 or more businesses because 1 or 2 might fail, and you have to. So, but if you're relying just on the dollar bills of that trucking company alone, I think you're setting yourself up for disaster. And again, you might be asking, where else can you find opportunities? I can help. Watch our videos, but these companies, they've created washouts, they've created mechanic shops, they've bought and sold their own commodities. I mean, the list goes on and on, but like you said, they have been able to hedge themselves by having multiple businesses. It's kind of the same reason that we run 6 businesses. It didn't start that way, but we're able to say, if one segment's down, another segment may be prospering, but we can kind of hedge all those together and weather the times.
And if people want to learn more, if they want to find you, where can they find your operation or yourself?
Yeah, for me personally, I'm very active on LinkedIn, Jared Flinn. You can go to Facebook as well. But for bulk loads, bulkloads.com or livestocknetwork.com. We have a 24-hour support team. Happy to walk you through. Even if you're thinking about this industry or just have questions, we're here as a resource. Check out our YouTube page. Go to YouTube, type in bulk loads. Again, we do interviews of trucking companies, farmers, ranchers, small businesses all across America. Every week, we tell their story. We talk about the struggles. We talk about the opportunities. And again, I guarantee you, I was just talking to somebody yesterday. I was at the state fair and he was watching a video from a couple weeks ago. And he's like, I didn't realize that this company did that. And I'm going to incorporate that in my business. So yeah, really, really encourage you to check out our YouTube page.
Jared, thank you so much for coming on Break Check. Looking forward to all the exciting stuff you're doing and having you back to hear about it.
Thanks, Charles. Good to see you again. Take care.
All right. Well, that's today's show. And see, in freight, you don't have to steal the load, fake insurance, or commit fraud to end up paying for all of that. So verify everything, document everything, because when the load goes wrong, somebody's getting the bill and you need to make damn sure it isn't you. I'll see you Thursday right here on FreightWaves Break Check, but I'm going to take you out with this. The Duff Man is at it again. Let's see what he posted today.
Wow!